I like how KJP makes me feel. She gives me confidence that I could do that job. Former Biden press secretary Karine Jean-Pierre announced that she's writing a tell-all book about the Biden administration. In response, people are saying, thanks, but I just wanted a Big Mac. And when Joe Biden was asked if he's going to read the book, he replied, over my soon-to-be dead body.
Karine Jean-Pierre walked into that press briefing expecting business as usual, but Greg Gutfeld turned it into a comedy roast. One moment, she was dishing out White House word salads. The next, she was getting verbally deep-fried on live TV. Gutfeld didn't just challenge her, he hosted a full-blown barbecue with punchlines sharper than her heels. If political smackdowns are your thing, this was a politically incorrect masterpiece.
All right, so Karine Jean-Pierre wrote a book, and her fans are already sharpening their crayons. And it's just what we need, a tell-all from the woman who spent 2 years telling everyone that Joe just had a cold and not rigor mortis. If the title hadn't already been taken, it should be called Art of the Steal.
Karine Jean-Pierre enters the press briefing room daily like she's auditioning for a Broadway musical titled Deflect, Distract, and Derail. The tap dancing years minus the choreography, armed only with cue cards, an empty binder, and sock puppet level finesse.
P also says she's leaving the Democratic Party. I say God bless her. Not many people have the patience to wait in a line that long. In her book, she says the White House was broken. This after 2 years along a president who wasn't housebroken. But she only realized this after she stopped getting paid to defend it. But like Jake Tapper's book, it's a new genre of Biden tell-alls that should be subtitled, I had no idea because I'm severely retarded.
At this point, watching Karine Jean-Pierre spin facts is like watching a cat try to swim, chaotic, unnecessary, and full of flailing and denial. Greg Gutfeld didn't even need to destroy her. He just rolled his eyes, and she melted like a $1 tree candle under a heat lamp. This wasn't a debate, it was a mercy roasting.
Realizes she was carrying water for a man whose brain was as wet as his pants. Remember, this is the same broad who stared America in the face and said this.
Comments were made in that report about that, obviously about his memory that we don't believe lives in reality. 80's the new 40, didn't you hear? He is as sharp as ever. They are cheap fakes video. They are done in bad faith.
And it's not true, right? The president wasn't wandering.
Is anyone in the White House hiding information about the president's health or his ability to do the job day to day?
Absolutely not.
He's the president of the United States. You know, I can't even keep up with him.
Let's be honest, Karine Jean-Pierre is the political equivalent of that automated message you get when screaming representative into the phone before giving up in despair. She's like hitting every red light on your morning commute. Ask her a direct question, and she channels the spirit of non-answers past, delivering a response that loops endlessly like a dog chasing its tail.
Yeah, you couldn't keep up with Joe. Sorry, Joe couldn't keep up with FDR in the 100-yard dash. And I'm talking right now.
Damn.
But she expected us to believe she couldn't keep up with the guy who had to have an electric fence put up around the White House so he wouldn't in the neighbor's yard.
Bless Greg Gutfeld, who showed up armed with nothing but sarcasm and a functioning frontal lobe to things that send Karine Jean-Pierre into full Windows XP reboot mode. When it comes to real information, she's as accurate as a broken weather app and as urgent as a DMV worker on lunch break.
So was Karine too dumb to notice Biden was a mess, or was she just dishonest? Pick your poison, moron or mercenary. Now there's a great name for her book. I'm going with mercenary, because this whole book tour didn't spring from a burst of guilt. According to Politico, she was copying her publicist on emails while still press secretary. So she was planning this from the podium. She's like a pilot who puts on his parachute and oxygen mask while your plane's leaving the airport.
Credit where it's due, no one dodges a question quite like Karine Jean-Pierre. If avoiding accountability were an Olympic sport, she'd have more medals than Michael Phelps. Greg Gutfeld didn't even have to try. He lit a match, and she combusted without provocation. Fact-checking her is pointless. You're better off checking if her sentences ever end with an actual point. Spoiler, they don't. What made it even better was that Gutfeld didn't need fireworks, just a sarcastic grin and a few well-timed side eyes. and suddenly Karine was one flub away from citing SpongeBob as a credible source. Watching her spiral was like someone explaining cryptocurrency to a houseplant. Nobody understood anything, and we all walked away dumber. You'd think that after months of flubbing answers and confusing inflation with climate change, border policy, or whatever the crisis of the day is, she'd have a strategy. But no, she sticks to her greatest hits: dodge, pivot, blame the previous administration, toss in some buzzwords, and pray no one follows up. She's the live-action equivalent of a magic 8-ball shake her up and hope something vaguely relevant pops out. Gutfeld didn't even need notes. Her incompetence was the presentation. And for someone whose job is communication, her verbal range rivals that of a toaster.
A crisis of faith, it was a business plan. She didn't leave the Democrat Party. She managed her exit like Pelosi dumping stocks before she signs the corporate tax hike. She was even pining for a spot on The View, which is like angling for the best seat in a garbage truck. But she didn't get the gig, probably because she refused their lunch bucket of thawed mackerel. That's what you feed the talent at SeaWorld.
Let's not pretend this is anything new. Karine Jean-Pierre has been ducking accountability since day one. If she were any more evasive, she'd be in witness protection under the alias "not my job." Her idea of preparation seems to involve throwing on glasses to look serious and stapling random charts together like she's hosting a TED Talk in a universe where facts are optional. And what does she bring to the table? A binder. A binder so massive it probably has its own zip code. Yet every time she opens it, it's like reading shampoo ingredients, vague, confusing, and possibly irrelevant to reality. Greg Gutfeld saw that binder and probably thought she was auditioning for a part-time librarian job at a gas station. It's telling when even Gutfeld, who trades in sarcasm, doesn't need to exaggerate because the facts are already laughable. Karine once claimed the border was secure while it looked like a Walking Dead season finale. She insisted the economy was booming the same day eggs were priced like iPhones. At this point, reality is just a distant cousin. She occasionally waves to from across the room. Never.
Even the most reliable lefties are roasting her, but it serves him right. After all, she was their pick, a historic first. Black, lesbian, and board certified by visiting angels. But you know it's bad when DC operatives call it a grift. Hell, that's like Taylor Swift calling you a 6. But they say that she was ineffectual, unprepared, needed to be coddled, and couldn't manage a team. What's that sound like? DEI. What happens when you hire someone based on identity and not merit?
And then there are the excuses, dear sweet democracy, the excuses. With Karine Jean-Pierre, everything is someone else's fault. Always. If a meteor hit DC, she'd probably blame climate change, white supremacy, the Supreme Court, and Greg Gutfeld's eyebrows, probably in that order. Watching her redirect blame is like watching a toddler caught drawing on the wall insist the crayon acted alone. Gutfeld, ever the patient satirist, didn't even interrupt her spirals. He just sat back and let her bury herself in word salad so dense it could bring a vegan to tears. Eventually, you don't need to debate Karine, you just give her enough rope and let the metaphorical swing set collapse under the weight of her nonsense. And the kicker? She still acts like she's winning the room. Sis, you're not even winning your binder. Every page you flip feels like a new chapter in the How Not to Be a Press Secretary handbook. At this point, she could publish it and call it 50 Shades of Spin. There's a reason Gutfeld didn't even raise his voice. He didn't have to. He treated the whole event like a late-night comedy sketch, because frankly, that's exactly what it was. Karine turns yes or no questions into 3-part miniseries. Even Google Maps wouldn't try to navigate.
Personally, I think what was the toughest thing to see in the 3 weeks was there was a disconnect for me. What was happening with leadership in the Democratic Party and how it was truly, as my former colleague, communications director Ben LeBolt said, it was a firing squad, and I had never seen anything like it before.
And let's not forget the smug confidence, the kind that only comes from believing reading a memo equals solving a crisis. Karine Jean-Pierre's face during briefings says, "I've got this," while her answers scream, 404 policy not found. Greg Gutfeld didn't need to destroy her with facts. She self-combusted under the weight of her own incoherence. At one point, she tried to explain inflation using a metaphor about kitchen tables and family dinners, as if economic literacy is best conveyed through kindergarten story time. Little Timmy can't afford juice because Republicans. Great. Now explain why gas costs more than therapy. Meanwhile, Gutfeld just smirked like someone watching a magician repeatedly drop the deck. Who could blame him? Every word out of Karine's mouth is a firework of failure, bright, loud, and completely empty. She's no longer the press secretary. She's the excuse secretary, with a strategy built entirely on rambling until everyone forgets the original question. And sometimes it works, mostly because viewers are left trying to decode whether she's speaking English or just reciting lines from a political Mad Libs. In the end, she's less about clarity and more about confusion dressed up in competence cosplay.
The president has done more to secure the border and to deal with this issue of immigration than anybody else. He really has.
There's a word for that. Pathological.
And let's not even start on Karine Jean-Pierre's moments of inspiration, those fleeting seconds where she tries to channel Obama-level gravitas and ends up sounding like someone dramatically reading the back of a cereal box. Today, we reaffirm our commitment to communities, strength, equity, boxes, windows. Next question. Greg Gutfeld didn't bring fire. He brought a mirror, and what a horrifying reflection it was. If incompetence had a face, it'd be hers, complete. With that strained smile she flashes anytime someone brings up immigration, Ukraine, or anything requiring a real answer. The saddest part, she genuinely seems to think it's going well. Like the band on the Titanic playing through the iceberg, she's fiddling while credibility sinks. Gutfeld was just the guy pointing to the lifeboats, laughing while she tried to patch the hull with confetti and optimism. And somehow, the media still nods along.
Thinking in boxes, but as a black, lesbian, French, Haitian female, she checks more boxes than a gynecologist.
On the order form!
On the order form!
My God!
All those applications you gotta fill out.
That's the thing.
What, you think I meant vaginas?
Ew.
Disgusting people. But now everyone says she's incompetent and lazy. You know, after they called me racist for saying that. That's not why I'm racist.
Nope.
Greg Gutfeld doesn't need a debate stage, just give him one Karine Jean-Pierre clip and let him go, because the absurdity writes itself. Her approach to crisis management is basically Ctrl-Alt-Delete. Her response to criticism is duck and cover. And her idea of a bold stance is rearranging the words we stand firmly committed like motivational fridge magnets. She's the human version of buffering. Ask a question, wait 7 seconds, and get a spinning wheel of vague generalities. Gutfeld didn't destroy her. She walked into the room with a box of self-roasted marshmallows and doused herself in lighter fluid. If this administration were a sitcom, Karine would be the character who delivers confusing exposition before tripping over the coffee table. And Gutfeld? He's the laugh track, except it's live, and no one has to add it in post-production. This isn't political theater anymore, it's political karaoke. And Karine keeps picking the same off-key song, forgetting the lyrics halfway through. Every press conference feels like a choose-your-own-adventure book written by someone who's never finished a sentence. Greg didn't need prep. Karine came pre-clowned. All he had to do was point at the circus and let her juggle her way into oblivion. She's not spinning facts. She's tossing them into a blender and hoping the noise drowns out the questions long enough for the timer to run out. And let's be honest, this isn't about ideology anymore. It's about competence. And Karine Jean-Pierre has the political competence of a potato in a tuxedo. She might look the part, but you're not getting a policy briefing, you're watching a live demonstration of what happens when performance meets paralysis. Armed with nothing but sarcasm and a functioning grasp of reality, Gutfeld sat back and watched her perform her greatest illusion yet, pretending she has any credibility left to burn. It wasn't a destruction, it was a wake, and the coffin was filled with every real answer she never gave. Her briefings have devolved into surreal performances, interpretive dances. Through foggy government nonsense, she rattles off riddles, half-baked truths, and metaphors so twisted they'd make a fortune cookie blush. Ask her about the border, and she'll pivot to infrastructure. Mention inflation, and she'll launch into a tale about equity and lemon farming. By the time she finishes a sentence, the question is forgotten and the audience has aged 5 years. And yet, she delivers every misfire with TED Talk confidence. That's what broke Gutfeld, not just the nonsense, but the pride in He didn't expose her, he revealed what was already empty.